And I think that a very important starting point is having very clear what you are as a company and what you're not. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, Challenging the Fifth Level. My name is Luis.
I'm David.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So today we're going to switch it up a bit. We're not that we don't always do off the cuff, because, you know, there are some targets that we'd like to sort of meet in every podcast, or at least a subject line, so that our producer, Mr. Chris Nicholson, doesn't
shouldn't kill us. Shouldn't kill us.
Smackdown on us.
Man's strict. Man is strict. Gotta tell you.
Shout out to you, my dear sir. He's behind the camera and makes it happen. And shout out to Sly and the sound control.
If you know a battery supplier, we could use one. But
yes, our cameras have been having issues. So yeah, if you're a battery producer for cameras, hit us up for sponsorship. Subscribe. Today, I think we're starting the new year, 2024. Just in case you're watching this in the future. And I think that there is a lot of turbulent waters right now.
Oh, boy.
I think that this has been a very challenging 2023 for many businesses across the border,
absolutely,
both in Canada and the U.S.
All over the world.
Just as a parentheses, I'm based out of the U.S. right now, and David's
I'm here in Canada. But it's way beyond our borders.
It is, but let's focus on North America.
Let's do it.
Because of the fact that, these are the target markets that we kind of talk for. Although if you're from Europe, please subscribe and like us and give us your point of view. But the reality is, a lot of people are saying 2024, well, it can't get worse than 2023. Oh. So there's a little bit more of a positive outlook. It could get worse. Hopefully it doesn't. But what are the outlooks for 2024? And what should entrepreneurs and C-suite teams from small, medium, and large companies be looking for in 2024 as the year progresses, as we talk about interest rates, as we talk about, soft landings and inflation? What do you think, David?
I got to tell you, I participated in a presentation back a few weeks ago. If you're listening to this podcast later in the year, my apologies. It was like December of 2023. Let's call them economists, were really laying it thick. And they said, listen, we're going to spend the next 10 minutes making you cry, and then we're going to take it about a minute or two to make you happy, so don't sweat it. And the picture was bleak. Interest rates, a few years ago, 0%. Who the hell, I grew up as a kid. I don't know, I remember my first investment, I got 13.5% at the bank, and I thought I was a king. And, and all of a sudden they said to me, no, but you understand that interest rates where they are, if in order for you to save 13.5%, think about where interest rates really is. So at one point, I'm thinking about, think about it. We're here we are. At one point, we had 0% interest. Not anymore. Inflation. When you hear, inflation's getting better. We want to be at 2%. You always hear the economists. They want to be at 2%. We're not going to be under 3%, according to them. Now, you're saying, what's 3%? % per month. Yeah, that means every single time, your costs of business, your cost of everything, your costs are going up. And this was end of December. He says, okay, and then we have another problem. So this is the stuff we know about. Stuff we're not sure about is the global, right now we've got, 2 years, we're going on 2 years between Russia and Ukraine. If God, hopefully, by the time you hear this podcast, we have peace all over the world. But if Russia and Ukraine are still at it, we're talking about food prices. We're talking about a lot of other things that are still being impacted because of this war.
Plus now the war in the Middle East.
The war in the Middle East is another thing. And I don't really care what your political stance is, Israel, Hamas. This is not this podcast, folks. Okay. What this podcast is about is the impact of that is when you have shipping lanes in the Red Sea being blocked, being a problem. Compounded with, as we heard, somebody said to me, Panama Canal is impacted because of low levels of water. Suddenly, shipping lanes are restricted. We're in trouble. So as the bleak forecast is, there is major turbulence in front of us. That's what they told us. But they said, you got to look at it. If you're a really sharp-ish businessman, you don't have to be super sharp, but like a good, focused business person, and this is coming, there are opportunities there for you. And so, I don't know what you've been hearing about now that you're in the United States and you're now out of Florida and all that stuff, you have an election coming up. Yes. That's causing God knows, what kind of turbulence that's going to cause. There are all kinds of other, supply chain issues, other things. Luis, I don't know what you're hearing, but when I listen to these economists, you want to cry.
You do want to cry, and I think that with every moment of crisis, there's an opportunity.
Always.
We saw a lot of people make a lot of money with real estate during the pandemic.
Sure.
With local manufacturing when shipping lanes were closed. Making money with PPE, making money with a bunch of stuff.
Well, what's PPE? Let's for those who don't know what PPE is.
Personal protection equipment.
There we go. Like all those masks
and gloves, isolation gowns, etc.
There you go.
I guess what I'm hearing is, for the better, for the worse, we still have another 4 to 5 months of very high interest rates at a minimum. And the reason for that is, central banks need to balance out one of the last few items that they are considering under sticky inflation, and that's employment.
Yep.
Employment salaries, they're way too high. They're hoping that unemployment grows a little bit so that it balances out, reaches, a point of equilibrium for salaries. But the reality is that, if you take a poll of all the, head investment directors at the major banks, at least in Canada, they're split right down the middle.
Oh, yeah.
It's worse than an election where they don't know which way to go for 2 reasons. One, if you remove the high rate of rent and ownership costs because of the interest rates, you're at a 1.9% inflation rate.
Yeah.
And the other part is, salaries, but nobody wants to see people lose jobs.
Nope.
So versus we have a very strong economy in the United States, growth of 5% GDP. I've been in the States the last couple of months, and I'm going to be honest, restaurants are full.
Yep.
Stores are full.
Yep.
Stock supplies are very much out there. I have family that works in manufacturing in Canada. They own manufacturing companies and that service the real retail market, and production is down. Stores are emptier. They're trying to sell out or liquidate existing stock. So not many people are talking about this, but I think it's 2 complete realities. Usually we're a little bit more closer to our American counterparts. I think this time around we're a little bit far. And I think that if you're in the States, the outlook may be a little bit rosier than in Canada. I think that in Canada, however, there are some opportunities. I think that if you're a company that's flush on cash, not many are, but if you're flush on cash, buying doing key investments in real estate is one of the good ones.
Sure.
A lot of people are selling distressed properties. So I think that's a very solid opportunity. Land ownership is actually another one that's very solid out there because a lot of individuals, companies are abandoning property in outskirts. But we're talking about immovables.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about key opportunities in operations.
Before we get into key opportunities, I'm gonna throw one more thing which we both didn't talk about, and that is, but you touched on unemployment, and the problem is we have a labor problem. We have a labor shortage, and I'll tell you, one of the problems, and you talk to these economists, and what they said was, we lost 2 years of immigration thanks to COVID. Now, I don't, if you're in the United States, you're sitting here, we have another immigration problem. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the border. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. We're talking about skilled labor. And when you look at restaurants, they might be full. They're short-staffed. If you're looking at, you still have a staffing problem. It's now 4 years that we're shortage of people. Canada, thanks to immigration, we've crossed 40 million people. I mean, we tried to rapidly grow this, whatever, but we didn't solve the skill set problem. And so now I'm going to throw the question that you're trying to ask me. I'm going to throw it back at you. Knowing we have all these problems or these challenges, let's be fair, what would you tell your clients, your friends, you talked a little bit about real estate investment. What does a day-to-day business owner, what should they be looking at doing in 2024 to turn lemons into lemonade?
That's a very interesting question. And I think that when people seek advice, they're seeking advice because they want to eliminate pain.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the market and the way it's set up right now, we can't avoid the pain. We're going to have to absorb the pain and try to live with the least amount of pain possible. But even though you're still going to have to be subjected to pain. Listen, I've heard McDonald's out there that are paying $15, an hour.
Sure.
Costco's are paying upwards of $25 an hour. So people start asking themselves, why am I going to work at an office?
Doesn't teachers quit their jobs to go to work at Costco because they were making more money at Costco than they were teaching?
Absolutely. And then you have nurses quitting to become traveling nurses.
Absolutely.
Because they make 10 times the amount of money.
Absolutely.
So I think that the reality is, again, it's split into two realities. If you're a business owner versus if you're, somebody that's selling your time, there's two complete realities there. I'm going to start in reverse order. I think that nowadays, because of the lack of labor and the lack of skilled labor, if you're preparing yourself to go back into the marketplace, I think a trade is a very smart place to start. I think that, compared to the United States, Canada has a lack of tradesmen.
Oh, yeah.
And it is crazy the amount of the type of prices that we're paying. And because of the inflationary prices and because of people losing their jobs and because of everything else, now you're kind of stuck because the prices that, these tradesmen are willing to charge is too high for the price point that people can pay or can afford to pay. So now that has to balance itself out.
Sure.
Versus in the States, I've met handymen, I've met, landscapers, and, there's many. But why? The market's obviously way bigger. So when you're looking at outlooks for Canada, if you're trying to get back into the labor market, I think that starting your own business in, for example, house cleaning, there's such a demand for that. Trades,
Absolutely.
across the board.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. Now, what does that mean for business owners, existing established business owners? Well, I think that at that point, you now have to, double down and review your core. I mean, we've talked about it in previous podcasts where we're talking about the why. What is your why? But this goes now a little bit beyond your why. And why am I saying there's a lot of whys here? But the reason why is because you now have to give your clients a reason to stay with you. And you have to have a very clear roadmap of what you're going to be doing and how you're going to survive the next year. I mean, we all know that there was a bunch of layoffs in the last year and so, and that's because carrying costs for labor and for personnel when companies are paying them out of their operating lines of credit have gone up the roof. Some companies are paying upwards of 120% on labor now, not because they've increased the salaries, it's because you're paying them off of your future sales. And so you're paying them out of your line of credit.
Right.
So now the interest rates went up. So a person that makes 50, 60, 70,000, it's actually costing you 100, 110 after interest and after all the other price increases. So it's not a linear equation. And I think that a very important starting point is having very clear what you are as a company and what you're not.
It's funny because one of the things that I was going to touch on upon the labor and in terms of opportunity is looking internally at your operational processes. For example, look at your technology stack. Look at what you're using right now. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm blown away, and I hate this phrase, we've always done it this way.
Oh, Lord.
And it's like, if you're an entrepreneur today and your staff says, oh, we do it because we've always done it this way. Oh, God.
AI is coming for you.
AI is coming for you. Like, I want to tell you something. And there are a lot of companies that are afraid of technology. I get it. You're afraid of change. You're an entrepreneur and you're like, oh, man, I don't want to put in this software. I'm uncomfortable with this and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but what's that costing you? What kind of resources do you need for that? How efficient are you? If we know that 2024 is going to be challenging, and let's just say for argument's sake, because of interest rates, only because of interest rates, your costs have gone up. Something has to go down to counterbalance it. And one of the great opportunities is to look at your processes and to become more efficient.
Automation.
Automation is one possibility. You have others, are you using the right software? I mean, maybe this is the time to go and look at an ERP and, an enterprise resource program. Now, I know that a lot of people say an ERP is a large company software. No, nowadays there are systems today built for small businesses, and they are making you more efficient. Internal communication, your abilities to work together, a lot of these other things are to make you better. That's just one example. Now, please do not call your salesperson. Don't call your salesperson right now from an EDI company and say, come in and pitch me. No. What I'm suggesting right now is get an operational process auditor, expert, to come and to look at your structure, how you work, so that they can give you the right recommendations. Because somebody who's selling you software, selling you a product, they're not selling you a solution right now. After the audit, yeah, absolutely, go through that audit, see what you need, and then you can find the supplier or the partner that you're going to work with. Now, in Canada, one of the beauties is that the Canadian government, as much as they do some weird things, there are programs to help businesses to pay not only for that audit or a good portion of that audit, but also to help you find the money to pay for the operational adjustments to the software and the service and what have you.
There's a grant going on right now.
There's a Quebec grant, there's a federal grant, and even in the United States, there are some states that are willing to help you to meet the digital requirements. And so if I were right now a business owner today and I'm saying, okay, I don't know how I'm going to change sales, I don't know how I'm going to change I have a labor shortage or whatever, I make my people happier, more efficient. Luis, they're going to stay.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to lose good people. I will be able to reduce my costs, and I'll be able to become more competitive. And when the day comes that we get out of this economic rut, I'm ahead of my competitors.
Oh, 100%. I think that's we're starting to see it more and more at our software company, trying to see companies call us and say, listen, how can we automate and streamline things like, for example, our sales online, and how can that reduce at least one middleman and make sure that our orders go in directly to our warehouse and shipping.
Right.
How can we reduce mistakes so that things roll out faster? I think that you're absolutely right in streamlining and automating, particularly. And
I mean, that's just one example.
That is very much one example. But let's talk about another one that's in the tip of everybody's tongue right now is AI.
Oh boy!
I mean, we're just having a conversation offline about how like AI is touching
game changer. It's a game changer
from lead generation to development and design to video and creativity.
You know what? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to stop you because I want to tell you. I scared somebody because I said, "Oh, have you looked into AI?" And they went, "Oh, no. I don't want to look it up." I said, "You have a cell phone? You have email?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Do you remember the days before you had email? Do you remember the days before you had a cell phone?" I said, "These were game changers. These made you efficient. These made you better. This is about to rock your world." So if you're not embracing AI today and starting to understand its implications in your business, by the time you wake up, you're left in the dust. This is going to be one of the biggest game changers in the world for years to come.
Absolutely. And you have to jump ahead of the game.
But there are people who are scared because they don't want to be the guinea pigs. They don't want to be, there are people who are sheep. They don't want to be, the risk taker. But I don't think we're there. I think we're way past the risk taking. I think you need to embrace AI.
I think the technology is advancing so fast that nowadays, we don't have to wait 5 years or 7 years or 10 years to see the results of what's going on. Right now, people are coming out with product design in days and testing it out all through AI. So, if you're too shy for AI, you should be looking into definitely implementing technology. I was recently talking to a client who's trying to go into what I would consider a traditional industry, right? in the schmutt, in the clothing business, clothing. And when we were breaking it down, we started asking the proverbial why. Why do it this way? And the answer was, well, because it's always been done this way. And I said, well, how about bringing in technology that can do this. And yes, the barriers of entry are a little bit higher. Long-term savings can get a startup company beyond the 3-year mark.
Absolutely.
Creating intrinsic value.
I'm a sales guy, and I always look at the revenue side, and I say, okay, so How do we get better? Right? Times are tough. How do we get better? You know what? This is a great opportunity to really sharpen the pencil. And I'm not talking price. What we've forgotten, when times are good, we don't train our teams. We don't bother to invest in a lot of the salespeople because we're saying things are good. Orders are coming in. Don't have to worry about it.
Cows are fat.
Exactly. Well, let's use a biblical analogy. The cows are thin. It's the 7 years of thinness, right? So those cows are not fat anymore. What do you do? And I think that part of, and I look at it and I'm saying, salespeople are very hard to find today. Good salespeople, it's even harder.
Yes.
And I don't care if you're in the US or Canada. I hear this all the time. I have clients looking for salespeople. They're asking me to find them salespeople. And I've interviewed a ton of them and they're, wow, it's incredible.
Very hard.
Training today. This is an opportunity. And by the way, again, governments do, especially, there's these programs where you must invest a certain percentage of your revenue, towards training. And a lot of companies are saying, I'll do it this way. Your sales team is their backbone right now in keeping that cash coming in. So why not invest in your sales team? Why not give them the right training? It's not about product or service training. It's a skill set. How do we make them better? How do we make them more efficient? AI is just is a tool, but a carpenter who understands how to use his or her tools will build you the most beautiful thing in the world. You give me certain tools and I know how to use a hammer and a screwdriver, but I don't know.
Watch out fingers.
But if you give me, certain tools, forget it. Okay? I need training. I need to learn. And this is as we're giving recommendations to business owners, and they're thinking, that's a waste of money. No, there's a long-term ROI that comes out of the training and helping your team get better. Now, I'm saying it to the sales team. It could be to any department. But if there's anybody who needs it, because I'm going to ask you something, okay? Do you know how many schools teach sales? When we went to elementary school, did we learn sales? No. University, did we learn sales?
No.
Okay, there are barely 100 universities across North America that teach something to do with sales. Okay, that's not a lot. So here we are. Where are we getting trained salespeople? If you
They usually come from marketing, and that's a misnomer.
No. Marketing.
They should not be doing sales.
No. But once upon a time, IBM, Procter & Gamble, these guys had these great sales training programs, and a lot of them still do. But that means I have to go work for those large companies, and then the small to mid-sized businesses don't have the better.
They can't afford them afterwards either.
So absolutely. So training your team, oh my God, that I think now this next 12 months, golden opportunity. They'll be better at what they do now when times are tough, and when times get better, look out.
I think that on a closing note on this one, I think that one of the most important things is when there's a lot of noise, you have to try to slow down your world, chop up the problem into digestible pieces. I remember having conversations with companies who would come, traditional companies that would probably, have a hard time understanding why they would need a website, have landscapers and construction companies and this and that. And they say, well, how can I embrace a website? Or, what would I gain out of it? And nowadays, they can't live without their website because they're lead generating from TikTok and they're lead generating from Google.
But I'll ask you a question. How much money are people, I'll ask a question differently. If you can't monetize your website, is it effective? What I mean by monetizing it is, are you able, if your website can't generate leads, should you even bother having a website in the first place?
Well, that's a very loaded question, I'll tell you, because a lot of people will now consider that if you don't have a website, you don't exist, you're not a legitimate company.
Agreed.
And there's a lot of these, what we call, business card type websites, landing page, Wix and Squarespace and whatnot. But you're absolutely right. If you're actually going to invest in something, you might as well ensure that you have monetization across the board. Because if not, it's just another sunk cost and it takes away from your bottom line.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something, as an ex-advertising guy, and I did this for 12 years, and I went through the 2008 recession and other economic ups and downs. There were so many studies done back in the 90s and 2000s after all these economic ups and downs and whatever. And they were talking about those that advertised during a economic challenges, call it recessions, whatever, and those that didn't. How did they do during the economic turmoil? How did they do after?
True.
And the most incredible thing was, I remember in 1995, how many businesses went
Don't
under?
date yourself.
I am old. In 1995, how many businesses went under post-economic challenge? And their rivals survived. And when I asked the rivals, what was the difference? You guys sold the same thing, more or less the same price. We advertised. They did not. Today's world, I'm not talking about traditional advertising. I'm not saying go take a full page out in your local paper. That's not what I'm talking about, although please support your local newspapers. The reality is, and you're a marketer, you don't communicate. Your website is an information piece, but it's not a communication piece. You're not communicating who you are, what you are, yeah, it's there.
Well, you need to.
You do. But I'm saying using social today, social media, if you haven't put that as part of your communication plan, I think you're leaving behind a golden opportunity there as well to communicate to people who you are, what you do, how you do it differently, whatever. Because people, you know it better than I do. You're a marketer. The consumption of social media is incredible. And if you're nowhere to be found, who's going to want to do business with you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, as a communication specialist, that's the number one key thing. It's reaching out through storytelling, which is it was a subject for another class.
We're not going to.
I teach that at McGill all the time, and it's great.
This is not a class. I'm sorry. There's no bell. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But to conclude on that, I think that 2024 is going to be a challenging year for people that do not want to embrace change. 2024 is going to be a key year, and it's going to change the landscape of business quite a bit. Businesses that survive this year and who thrive this year will embrace technology, will embrace automation, will embrace software development, will embrace AI, and will actually develop a strategic operational plan to make sure that these things are not just a buzzword that revolves around their business. It actually becomes part of their core operations.
Well, what you said is apropos is, look, without a plan, those that plan, fail to plan to fail, that you've heard that line before. And this is a great time to really plan it out. We do intend to grow. How will we get there? What do we need? What tools? Where do we invest? What do we do? You can't do it all. I mean, you can't have 5,000 goals.
No,
like to get through 2024, you need to establish serious goals for you and the organization. People, the morale will be down if they don't know where you're going, because they're only hearing bad news on all the reports. They hear it all the time. Everything's bad news. Turn on the radio, watch TV. It's all bad news. But if you're, steering the good ship lollipop and saying we're going to go in the right direction, it'll feel better. People will feel better, and you'll get to your destination. What 2024 has to be looked at is, if you're, try this a little differently. If you're the kind of person who says, we've always done it this way, you'll become a statistic by the end of 2024.
And I think that end of 24 is going to be a very, a very optimistic approach. I think that in the States, we're starting to see some interest rates go down. So we may see some of those companies who are on Lifeline last a little bit longer. But I think in Canada, the minute SEBA gets called in, we're going to see.
But again, I think it's more along the lines of what I was trying to say was, you don't embrace the anarchy to initiate change, improvement. The statistic I'm talking about is a failure.
Absolutely.
And I think that 2024, if there was never a better motivator to get you to embrace change, then you should be done. You should be out of business.
Well, this is the year for change.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And one thing that they're saying about 2025 is there's a way rosier outlook for 2025.
For those companies.
For those companies. Not just survive. We're able to find a way to thrive. Because survival, is here and there. But if you really take the time and do what we've been talking about in this podcast, you're thriving. Your competitors are dying.
It's true. It's true, and I think that those are words to sort of live on for the next year is to try to find that competitive edge to the advances in technology. Because if not, you're going to become a statistic.
There you go. Let's wrap it
And
up.
so talking about statistics, you know what helps us is when you click subscribe, when you like it, when you like our video, and when you share. So please remember, share, like, subscribe. And if you want to reach out to us, our information is in the description below. Reach out, say hi, tell us you like our stuff or tell us you don't. Either way, we appreciate all the comments.
And please, we want to hear what should we be talking about? What can we share with you, and how can we help you? The reason we call this the Level 5 podcast, ladies and gentlemen, is really because it's lonely at the top.
It is.
And as a result, we've experienced it, we've lived it, we've worked with people who've been there and done that. This is your sounding board. This is your opportunity to hear the ideas, the experiences that can help you and guide you through the turmoil. And as we've done through this podcast, the turmoil of 2024 can turn out to be a very prosperous 2025. So on that, please share this with all your friends, your network of business owners, your network of friends. Love for people to download our podcast. We're everywhere. Every podcast, YouTube, probably saw us on social.
Probably saw us on social.
And on that one, let's wrap it up.
Have a great 2024. We'll see you in our next one. Take care. Cheers.